tonight, I want to leave you with three things. I want to leave you with a belief, I want to leave you with an energy and a curiosity to find out why leadership may already be in your DNA. And the way I bring that to life, hopefully, is through the 10 ingredients, and you'll hear a lot about that in the book, the 10 ingredients that we're all born with. So whether it's the President of the United States, whoever that might be next, you, me, the guy on the streets of India, it doesn't matter. We are all born with 10 ingredients that shape our DNA. Now that's a very big and bold claim to make. And I couldn't deliver on that claim if I didn't make it real through stories from different people. So if I just point out the first ingredient, which is the first chapter of the book to keep things simple, and the last ingredient, which is the 10th ingredient and the last chapter of the book, are self and luck. So the claim I make is that all of us are born with a self. Hands for anyone who disagrees. Now whether that self is good, bad, ugly, complete or incomplete is something else. But the fact that we are born with a self, with an identity that we are always wanting to find out more about is a given fact. So luck is, I believe, and I hope I prove that in the book through many stories, the luck factor is again something that we are all born with. Now all we need to do is make luck happen. Attracting luck and how we do that is what I've really applied in the book. So rather than waiting for luck to come to you, how can you really attract luck and bring it to you? Right? The other ingredients, if you look at self and luck as almost the bookends, the 8 other ingredients or 8 other chapters in the book are the ones around in the room. So there's instinct. Again, no one can argue with the fact that we are not born with an instinct. Now whether we choose to act on that instinct or one of them have fallen down, but that's okay. The classic HSBC act of holding up focus. I really like that. The bank is very good on focus. So thanks Mike, thanks Philippe. Instinct. Instinct is just something that no one can put their finger on and say this is what it looks like. This is how you do instinct. Instinct is just a very fleeting sensation, but a very powerful one. And I was amazed. I'll give you 2 examples. I was sitting with Sir George Martin, who I was incredibly lucky to spend an afternoon with, the legendary producer of the Beatles, who's now 86. And it was amazing for him to share the story of how his father was a carpenter, and just with an amazing instinct. And his father never followed any manuals or frameworks on how to build furniture, he just went with his instinct. And that kind of framed Sir George's instincts about music. Now you might think carpentry and music, how does the two come together? It doesn't matter, it did. And the best thing he says is that he's really lucky that he's not overeducated in music, because I think with lots of education comes a constraint and a boundary where you can't let your instincts run free. And so the way he took 4 very untrained kind of raw boys in the Beatles and really brought them to life and made them the legend that they are, started with his father's hammer and the carpentry work that he did. So then when I talked to Sir David Lees, who can't be with us in the room, he's the chairman of the court of the Bank of England. Now when you hear Bank of England, instinct is not the first word that comes to mind. And Sir David was amazing in how he said that a lot of his decisions in the boardroom are purely to do with instinct. So even if he has a lot of data and logic and analysis in the room telling him to take a decision one way, if his instinct, which at the age of 71, tells him to do something else, he'll go with his instinct. And there are again stories in the book of how he did that. Another great example, and I'll take another bank because I think in the world there's a big stereotype about bank and the legal profession, etc. They don't do instinct. Stuart Gulliver, again, who has been called off by a regulator and can't be in the room, the group chief exec of HSBC, very honored. He's in the book and in the back of the book as well, who talks a lot about how his DNA got shaped when he started off, establishing the bank in Hong Kong when there was no electricity and there were rickshaws carrying piles of money to customers. There are stories like that and how his instinct got shaped, and today he's running a very sophisticated bank. I write a lot about instinct and how to trust your instinct and when not to trust it, because instinct sometimes can also betray you. So there's a whole chapter on that. Fear. Fear is a scary word, needless to say. But fear can be a fantastic catalyst for change. I think when we conquer our fears or kind of go over that threshold of letting the fear in and then still doing what we want to, that's when we really build our next version. So in the chapter on fear, I talk about how fear and emotion go hand in hand, but sometimes really unlocks and helps us build the next version of ourselves. Some of the other ingredients in the book are, as I said, emotion, to kind of get started. In emotion, which is all about feelings. Now, feelings are not just touchy-feely things. Feelings are very powerful allies that help us make decisions and choices. So good emotions are great allies, but bad emotions are very destructive. So it's knowing when emotions like anger or ego or extreme sensitivity or feeling fragile, those emotions are not good emotions. But sometimes we carry them, right? It's knowing when to discover that, when to kind of spot them taking over our strength and our confidence and to stop them. So the chapter on emotion is, I think, told through the story of a priest, the chairman of Eversheds, Sir John Heaps, and music producer John Elliott Gardner. So there are three Johns in emotions, a chairman, a priest, and a music maker, who all talk about how emotions have shaped their leadership journeys. The dark side, there's a great friend and colleague of mine in the room who should talk about it rather than me, Jeremy. Dark side is, not Jem, but Jeremy. Dark side is a fantastic concept that we use a lot in our work and in corporate DNA. Dark side is when a seeming strength, if you do too much of it, tips over to the dark side. So to give you an example, confidence is a fantastic strength. But if you overdo it or do it badly, it becomes arrogance. But rather than look at a chief exec and say, oh, he's bad, he's arrogant, let's trace back the core strength and help him understand through coaching when it tipped over and became the dark side. Likewise, I think women suffer from this and some men may do as well. Being diligent is great because women like to get things right. But you do too much of that, I can see a lot of men nodding in the room. And they're thinking of their wives first before they think of their colleagues, I'm sure. So diligence is great because you want to get it right and you have a great standard of excellence. But you do too much of it, you become a perfectionist. Perfectionism in today's world, I think, is a great disabler in terms of getting things done and getting things done fast and quick enough. So it's just knowing when a strength tips over to the dark side. So there are 11 scales, which we call the Hogan scales, that you'll go through. But the quote I've used, Jim, if you give me an inch to read the rest, is, darkness always leads to light. A weakness can most often be traced back to a strength. I think this is very true of the UK and part of the Western world. We are obsessed with negativity and we are obsessed with weaknesses. I've always seen when I give a 360 or a feedback report to a client, the first thing that they look at is, what did people not like about them? Rather than look at what did people like about them. In Asia, people look at the positives first and deny any of the negatives exist. In the Western world, it's just the other way around. So the cultural facets are fascinating. And my point is, rather than just look at a weakness and say that's bad, let's see if there's a good in it, which somewhere got lost or confused. The other ingredients are creativity. Now, it's fascinating. A lot of people in the room I've coached have said to me at one point or the other that I'm not a creative person, I'm an analytical person. And this is again something that I think in the modern world and in the next generation, we need to stop thinking in silos like that. Imagination, as an instinct, we are all born with. Now, whether we allow ourselves to really make the most of it or not is a choice we have. But to say we are not creative is completely a fallacy. So again, in the creativity chapter, I've taken a lot of food, arts, music, science, filmmaking, and shown how aspects of creativity from those right brain disciplines can be brought to an analytical world like consulting, legal, banking, finance. Finance people, and some are in the room, can be creative. They are creative with my tax, so I know they can be. So creativity is a great, it's all about honesty tonight. So creativity is a great ingredient, but I think sometimes we don't allow ourselves to believe that we have the muscles of creativity that we can develop. The second ingredient in the book is the one behind Jenny and Emily. That's expression. So when I say expression, I think a huge amount of focus in the business world is on what you say and getting your words right. I think words are only 20 to 30%. I mean, you're listening to me right now, but you're also looking at me. You're also looking at how I hold myself. Is there real authenticity in what I say, or is it a script that I've memorized and I'm rattling it off? So I know how people think about other people, and expression is so much more than what you say. It's about who you are when you're not saying anything. You know, it's what's in your eyes when you look at someone. So Stuart Gulliver again is a lot in the book on the chapter on expression, talking about when he's trying to convince an extremely hard regulator who is difficult, cynical, and skeptical about the banking world. All he can do is really build trust through expression in his eyes, because no words can convince the other guy of taking a different route. So expression is really important, and again, in the chapter I've given lots of practical stories, insights, tips, and experiments that you can try to see how best can you express yourself to have greater impact. The last one, regardless of whether I spoke to a 70-year-old chairman or an 18-year-old student or a 42-year-old mid-career person who was trying to find their next break, was resilience. A big word, but resilience is literally, do I have the tenacity to bounce back from something when the world has knocked me out, right? So resilience is about not giving up and not quitting. And in my life, I know if I did not have that, I wouldn't be here today, because there were far too many things that could have knocked me out. So resilience is a very heartfelt chapter for me, because none of these ingredients would come to life if you didn't have that. And sometimes developing that thick skin, sometimes developing that kind of strength within yourself is extremely, extremely important. So there is another ingredient, but Philippe and Mike had dropped that on the floor, so I can see that now, which is focus.
Not Philippe and Mike, Anthony dropped it off.
Right, okay.
Let's be clear.
Is he from HSBC?
I'm not tall enough to have pulled that.
Right, so focus is about literally I do. And I don't say that just because I got married last week, but focus is an excellent ingredient, because a lot of people in the room I know, without taking examples, are great at coming up with great ideas. They talk about fantastic concepts, they come up with great ideas, they dream up fantastic dreams, but they don't focus on actually making it reality. So in the book I talk a lot about how kind of sharpening your instinct and delivering on your focus as an ingredient is really important. So those are the 10 ingredients in the book, which form the 10 chapters. A lot of you have asked me, why did I use the term DNA? Now, who can tell me what DNA stands for? No surprise, Mr. Fraser has the answer.
Right.
Did most of you know that? So yeah, it took me a lot of practice over the last 7 days to say that and roll it off my tongue really quick, but deoxyribonucleic acid is DNA. Now that's the geeky version of it, and there'll always be a little geek in me. But DNA for me is so much more than that, and that's the claim I make in the book, that we are all born with a biological DNA. We can't deny that. That's why we are standing where we are. Right? That's why we are breathing and we are functioning as human beings. Now, I firmly believe, this is going to sound really strange, that our leadership DNA sits alongside our biological DNA. The only thing we need to do is believe in it and release it to the world. The reason I say that is, if you think about DNA, it's actually a helix structure with a twin strand intertwined. And the fascinating thing about DNA is it has the ability to refresh itself, replicate itself, repair itself, and renew itself. So DNA is not static. And the sooner that I found that a few years ago, I not only named my business after it, but I really started believing I could apply that in my coaching. If you're born with something that's not fixed and not static, and it can be organic and it can evolve, Ray, pay attention. And I've been saying that since last week. It was the same in the wedding, by the way. DNA is... completely made me lose my train of thought. DNA is amazing in terms of replicating itself. So as soon as we make a mistake, or we face a failure, or we face a test, and we get knocked down by that, as long as you know that if you have the resilience, you have the focus, the tenacity, and the instinct, you can make that better. You can refresh yourself, and you can renew your cells, literally, and build the next version of yourselves. So hence DNA. But then there are two people who are incredible pillars of support for me in the book. One is Phil, my partner then, and my husband now, who is standing next to Rhea and not paying attention either. But Phil is, I think we were traveling somewhere abroad, and he was looking at one of the drafts in the book, and he said, you know this DNA thing, don't you think it's very complex? Will everyone get it? And I said, of course everyone will get it. And he said, what about the electrician from someplace in Scotland? Will you know what DNA is about? And I said, I'm not sure, I haven't met an electrician from Scotland. So we had a joke about this, and he said, he came up with this term which is in the book, which is called dormant neuron activator. Now tell me if that's not geeky. But a dormant neuron activator is a great symbol for the book, because a lot of qualities or traits or skills within us lie dormant. All it needs, with a bit of inspiration and self-belief, is activating. So DNA is a little acronym for dormant neuron activation, which is how can you bring out what's already within, which is the fundamental difference in the book. Rather than learning new ways to be, just believe it's within and release it to the world. Okay? And then I came and shared the story with Malcolm, one of the best mentors I can have. Malcolm? Here. And Malcolm said, that's good, what Phil has done, I can do even better. I said, okay. So he took DNA, he said, develop, nurture, and adapt, which is also brilliant, because the D for develop is develop self-awareness, nurture the 10 ingredients, but adapt it to the context. There will be cultures where huge amounts of instinct will stand you in very good stead and will make you really shine. I've worked in Japan, trust me, curbing a bit of your instinct is a good thing to do. So these things are very culturally and contextually driven as well. So the book is a lot about how context is more important than content. So that's DNA for you. The other term that you come up with a lot is blend. A blend of 10 ingredients. The reason we've called it a blend is because blend gives you the empowerment to mix and match the ingredients to the best of your ability, but to your unique personality as well. So if you have 10 ingredients, all of you don't need the same amounts of creativity and the same amounts of emotion. It's not an exact science like that. So Mike may need a bit more resilience, and Pierre may need a bit more instinct, right? Anthony may need a bit more creativity. These are all random examples. And it's all about where are you in your stage in life, and at the end of each chapter you have a very simple exercise that helps you assess and evaluate yourself on what is it you need. And like a little radio, what do you need to turn up the volume of and what you need to turn down the volume. So it helps you do that exercise. So in a way it's a self-coaching book, but it's also a book that you can really apply with your teams extremely easily. So releasing that blend of 10 ingredients is what the book is about. I've spoken a lot and I haven't looked at the page that I was meant to look at, so I can't remember what else I have to say, and you don't know any better, so I can I'll stop now. I'm going to invite a few people on stage for no more than a couple of minutes each to give a few different perspectives. I would like my mother to say a few words. She was very emotional this morning and she said, give me a little sign, and if I'm still feeling emotional, I'm not coming up on stage. So have a think, not now, later is what she said. The cover, what do you think of the book cover?
Brilliant.
I'm
a bit biased, but I think it's brilliant.
Some of you have seen it for the first time. What do you think of the cover?
Arresting, really strong.
Arresting, strong. Come on guys, you haven't had that much champagne yet.
Impactful, strong confidence.
Sorry?
Impactful, strong confidence.
Impactful, strong, confident.
And the red will be a good colour.
The red will a good colour.
Red's always a good colour. Always.
So says HSBC, yes. See, I choose my clients very carefully. Corporate DNA, red. HSBC, Vodafone, all red. ActionAid, red. So the cover wasn't designed by me. I came up with 20 terrible drafts, and I knew they weren't right. And I asked a lot of help from people. And I sent drafts to everyone over the weekend saying, can you vote them in order of appeal and attraction? But I'd like to invite Phil on stage to talk about why he designed the cover, what was there for him, and a great partnership between Phil and Bloomsbury to bring that to life.